at the ACS Mental Health Counseling YouTube channel, where we enable you to live a healthier, happier, more productive life through the insights of science and philosophy. My name is Adam Schwartz. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in New York. This series of videos is all about actionable tips, tricks, and hacks to help you improve your mental wellness and your productivity in the world. This video in particular is about confidence, building it, maintaining it, sustaining it over time. In my practice as a mental health counselor, specializing in men's issues and anxiety concerns, confidence is a recurring theme. Everybody wants more of it. No one thinks they have enough. And I've come to learn, too, that pretty much everyone is suffering from some level of imposter syndrome. And if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it is basically the phenomena of arriving at some point of responsibility in your life and feeling like, how did I get here? I don't deserve to be here. I'm not efficacious enough to be here, and feeling like you're going to be found out. It's a very, very ubiquitous phenomenon. So I've got two very actionable tips to help you increase your confidence. These are two things that you can begin immediately following this video. They're very actionable. They're very simple, which isn't to say easy, but simple, and you can start today. Whatever your level of confidence is now, if you remember to start today, you should see some improvement almost immediately. And remember, as I covered in the last video, a small improvement today equals massive growth over time. And this is the model that all meaningful change must and will follow. Unfortunately, there are very few shortcuts in life. Now, the bug in any potentially good piece of advice, of course, is remembering to employ it. So find a way to remind yourself, whether it be a habit building app, which again I endorsed in the last video and I find to be incredibly useful, or a trusted friend or family member, or some little note on your mirror in your bathroom. These are all good potential ways to remind yourself to actually regularly employ a new piece of advice. Now, when we speak about confidence, we're really speaking about two things: internal sense of self-efficacy, how we feel about ourselves and our own ability to navigate the world, and then externally perceived sense of self-efficacy, which is to say, when other people look at us, do they see someone who feels good about themselves and about their ability to navigate the world? These are the two factors that we're looking to nudge in more positive directions, one or the other, or optimally both. And if we are able to nudge both in the right directions, we can create something of a synergistic effect, which is to say a positive feedback loop, where we are feeling more confident about ourselves, behaving more confidently as a result. The external world is noticing that we feel more confident and are behaving more confidently, and then in turn are treating us with more respect, which again just spurs on the positive feedback loop and creates that synergistic effect that we're looking for. Positive feedback loops tend to create exponential growth rates, and as in any exponential growth rate, you might not notice a lot happening at first, but you will given time, so be patient. And if you find value in this video, please like, subscribe, share, comment, all the YouTube verbs. It is greatly appreciated, and it will spur on my enthusiasm for creating more content. All right, so let's get into it. Tip number one is so simple and straightforward as to almost seem trite or mundane, but I promise if implemented, it can make a massive change. It can be a giant asset in this quest to build confidence. Anyone who already does this understands the utility of the following heuristic or rule of thumb. Never rush. That's it. Move more slowly, intentionally, deliberately, languidly. When we rush, we send two signals. One to our own sympathetic nervous system, and one to the outer world of observers that we have made a mistake, that we have planned poorly, that we can't handle our environments. We both feel and look somewhat inept as we navigate space, and this is nothing but increased anxiety and diffidence in ourselves, and undermines the perception of confidence in those that are observing us. And so, move deliberately, move intentionally, move calmly with your shoulders back at almost all times. Now, there's one hopefully common sense caveat to be mentioned here. A handful of times in your life, you will have a legitimate emergency that requires you to rush. Legitimate emergencies do happen, but are so rare as to rightly be considered outliers that are not necessarily violations of this larger heuristic. So, use your common sense, never rush in your normal comings and goings, build this as a new habit, find a way to remind yourself as previously discussed. Once you solidify it as a habit, you will find it easier to do than not to do, and that really is the inflection point you're hoping to reach with any new habit. Move intentionally, move slowly. It'll make you feel less anxious internally and look more capable externally. Moving on to tip number two. Tip number two has to do with where you're focusing your attention and how you're dealing with your own inner chatter. If you're struggling with confidence, then in all likelihood, your own inner dialogue or monologue, however it presents, is probably not particularly encouraging. Dealing with an inner monologue or dialogue that is pessimistic and mildly self-abusive is a very common phenomenon. There are two main approaches for dealing with this. One is cognitive and takes the form of talking back to these negative thoughts through something like a positive self-affirmation. Unfortunately, the evidence regarding the efficacy of affirmations is kind of scanty, so we're going to take a different approach. So the latter approach that we're going to employ is visual grounding, which is a form of mindfulness. The technique is simply this. As you're occupying space, as you're moving through space, you are going to constantly be taking in all the details visually of that space. The colors, the shapes, the people's actions, the way the people gesture, the way the internal geometry of a room shifts as your vantage point within that room shifts. If you're doing this, if you're taking in all this information, it's going to have a few positive effects. First of all, it's going to preclude the negative chatter, your own negative, pessimistic inner monologue. That's definitely useful because that inner monologue might be undermining your sense of self. Also, it's going to make the environment less scary. You're going to be better connected to it. It's going to be less mysterious. Occasionally, something will happen in your environment that's a little bit surprising. If it does happen, if you're better connected to it, you're going to manage it more effectively. All of this will increase your internal sense of confidence. Now let's shift to how you're being perceived by others. Think of how you perceive someone whose gaze is constantly down versus how you perceive someone whose gaze is up, scanning, taking in their environment. The latter individual will always be perceived as more confident and hence consequently probably treated with more respect. Again, a small caveat here, I'm not advocating that you walk around making uncomfortable eye contact with everyone. That can have unwanted social connotations and it can be perceived as threatening. What I am advocating for is that you keep your gaze up, scanning, taking in the information that your environment has for you. So to sum up, the very simple and actionable changes that you're going to intentionally start making today are as follows. 1, move more slowly and deliberately with your shoulders back. And 2, keep your eyes up and remain visually connected to your environment. In so doing, you're going to feel better internally and look more capable externally. And as you're treated by the external world as someone who is increasingly capable, your internal sense of competence will continue to increase, and this is the positive feedback loop that I discussed initially. As with any change, the most difficult element is consistent implementation, and as with any potentially good piece of advice, it is only useful if implemented. And so again, find a way to build this as a habit, find a way to remind yourself, find a way to follow through. I wish you all the luck in the world in this endeavor, and remember that a small adjustment today can result in a massive change over time. That's all for today. I look forward to seeing you next time when we move on to a new topic and continue in our efforts to pursue a better you. All the best.